And if you haven't seen this before, we film in a goat barn because that's the only place to have room for a studio. So keep that in mind when you see these guys roaming around. What I like to do is draw a cartoon while at the same time talk to you a little bit about what it takes to be a cartoonist, experiences I've had as a cartoonist, how I get my ideas, stuff like that. Today I'm going to talk about hate mail. And yes, I do get some hate mail, not much. I will admit that 99% of the mail I get, of course that's email nowadays, but back in the day it used to be actually snail mail or hate snail mail. And it's almost always good. 99.9% is always good. But there is that really tiny percentage of people who like to be angry at me for one reason or another. And I'll tell you, one thing I found over the years is people like to be angry at things that I never intended them to be angry at. A lot of people have a real skill with reading between the lines and seeing things that weren't even there. All right, but having said that, I'm gonna start drawing a cartoon and I'll talk more about this. Now, back in the day, when I first started drawing Tundra 33 years ago, now it's almost 34 years ago, and back then, if I got any hate mail, like I said earlier, it was the snail mail variety because it was 1991 and the interwebs wasn't quite the thing it is today. When I would get some sort of angry email, and it was usually about, you know, of course I do a lot of outhouses in my comic strip, roadkill, things folks find offensive. Some people find offensive, not everybody, but enough to where I would get some email about it. And it used to really make me sad. When I'd get an angry email, I'd think, oh no, I made somebody mad, and it really kind of made me feel bad. Not anymore. And I don't want to make people angry. It's never my goal. But when I do make people angry, it's usually something, like I said earlier, something that was never intended on my part. And I really believe that being offended by something is usually the choice of the person who's offended. It's usually not the person doing the offending. And a lot of times, like I said, the people offended are offended by something that was never in the comic strip anyway. They will assume I meant something that I did not. I'm sure I'll be showing you some examples of some of the cartoons that people get upset about while we're doing this video here. So stand by for those. They'll be flashing on the screen. It used to make me feel sad, and I would get upset. It would actually make me almost nauseous. This is 33 years ago. And however, I've learned that responding to these mails or emails, hang on for a second, I got goats fighting. Hang on, hey, you two, get out of there. I've gotten really good about responding to these emails by diplomatically letting people know that they're idiots, and I found I've been able to do it in a way without sounding too much like a jerk, and that is a skill that's developed over the years. And so now I look forward to some mean, nasty emails. It doesn't bother me a bit. In fact, I think it's either healthy for me, so I don't mind it a bit. But like I said, I never ever try to offend anybody. It's never my goal to set out to offend somebody. But it still happens. And I like to not offend people for one simple reason. I really want to make people happy. That is my goal. Just to make people laugh, make them happy, and all that stuff. There's enough, stuff out in the world right now where people have to deal with bad news, whether it's on the national level, international level, or whatever. And especially when you're reading newspapers nowadays. And so I like to think that my comic strip, especially when it's in a newspaper, is a little refuge of sanity, a little place people can go and forget some of the serious stuff that's out there cooking in the world. But like I said, I've learned that there are a lot of people out there who just enjoy being offended. I think when they're offended, quite often it gives them a sense of empowerment over a rather powerless life or a powerless existence of some sort. And so when they can scream and yell through the email or whatever, I've gotten phone calls too, by the way. When they can take their aggression out on somebody else who they feel is done some horrible crime, I think that makes a lot of people just feel good about themselves. Someday I'd like to put together a book of all the comic strips that I've gotten angry emails about, and I haven't gotten enough to really fill up a book, which is kind of disappointing. But if I have enough time, it'll happen. And I thought it'd be neat to make a book of the ones that just got people angry or got me in trouble. There's been several that have got me in trouble from newspapers, got me thrown out of newspapers. That happens from time to time. And again, that used to bother me a lot, but not so much anymore. It doesn't really bother. I mean, I don't want to be thrown out of newspapers, but it's just, I've learned it's just one of those things that happens. You get enough people who write letters to the editor complaining about what a horrible cartoon I did, I mean, this happens with every cartoonist too. It's not just me. Certain cartoons are probably safer, you know. Certain cartoons probably rarely offend anybody, but certain ones certainly do. And I think I might be one of those that seems to fit that bill. When I go to when I do talks at schools or at Rotary clubs, stuff like that, chamber meetings, I always do, I like to do a PowerPoint presentation and show samples of my cartoons, talk about how I do what I do and how I got started. But I always have a section in there that is devoted just to Tundra hate mail. And that is by far, I found, the most popular part of my presentation is when I start showing cartoons that upset people and showing the actual emails I got from people and how upset they are about it. And so I find it's gold. It's absolute comedy gold, because people love to see what offends other people, and especially if it's something funny, you know, a funny comic strip that just somebody gets their panties in a bunch and they blow their top on it. All right. Well, so that is a cartoon I have drawn here. Now, of course, I'll do the magic, throw some color on it, throw a punchline in there, and boom, it'll be finished. And it'll probably offend somebody in the superhero DC universe somehow. Actually, Aquaman was always my favorite superhero. Well, once again, thank you for joining Two Goats and a Cartoonist. Appreciate it. I appreciate it. Crackers appreciates it. Cheese appreciates it. And until next time, we'll see you then.